Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're all well if you're here watching. If not, it's just me watching back from the VOD. Hope you're doing okay. My name is Fiona. I use she, her pronouns, and I run What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly RPG one shot podcast. It's incredibly warm here in the UK today. I am boiling. And yeah, I've got a bit of time between work, which just finished, and some recording later. So I thought, why don't I do a little cheeky stream? Although cheeky in the sense of like I thought about it this morning, so it's not it's not totally unplanned and stuff. But yes, here we are. I hope you're all well. Yeah, so I thought I'd explain. I asked for lots of suggestions actually in my Discord, the Where and DMBC Discords, which you can go check out. I'll put a link to it at some point when I remember to actually look at the chat. I'm really bad at doing that, so apologies in advance. And I've had a few suggestions so far. On the list is City of Mist starter set. That was suggested by Brian. Hamilton, my co-host from DM's Book Club, has also... Oh, hey! How are you, my friend? I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well, Kerry. Nice to see you here. Get ready for some... just me talking for an hour and a half. So yes, we had City of Mists. That was sort of suggested by Brian in my Discord. We also had Hamilton, who's the co-host of DM's Book Club, who has also suggested Dragon's Bane, which is on my list as well. I actually read the quick start for it separately. But today, I'm going to show you Fate Accelerated. Now, you might have heard of Fate Accelerated before. This is where I'm going to switch over to another screen. The reason you might have heard about it is because of this company, Evil Hat Productions. They have pretty much produced all the sort of best RPGs in the last decade or so. If I mosey on over the RPG tab, you'll recognize quite a lot of these top ones are here. Notably for me, Blades in the Dark, quite genre-defining, I would say, myself. On top of that, Band of Blades, which is sort of Forged in the Dark is the engine for that one. Good. Agon, which is like a Greek inspired RPG. That one uses your name as the mechanic for that. That's really cool. Again, at some point, I would like to cover that one as well. A whole lot of Fate, which I'm sure we're going to get onto. Monster of the Week. Everyone loves Monster of the Week. And of course, recently, Thirsty Sword Lesbians, Apocalypse Keys, and recently, Girl by Moonlight, all very successful. And I quite like Evil Hat Productions. They're a really good company. They're always like, certainly Fred Hicks is one of the founders of it. He's got a lot of tabletop RPGs that are used under a Creative Commons license. One notable one, if you're a listener to the podcast, is Lasers and Feelings, which is a very simple mechanic. It's used pretty much in everything. If you think of like Honey Heist, that is a Lasers and Feelings hack. If you think of, I think Lady Blackbird is another game that uses that sort of thing. Be Our Guest, which we played at UK Games Expo, is also a hack of that as well. I'm good, thanks. Finished world building for today, so yeah, I need to treat myself to a new RPG intro. Well, that is very lovely, Kerry Trickfoot. Hopefully I don't put you off this game. I tend to do that with these sort of games. But the other thing I want to quickly mention before going into, sort of diving into Fate in general, as a sort of a generic sort of game, in the sense of there's so many versions of it, is actually I just want to point out, if you're interested in Evil Hat stuff, they apparently did do this every third Thursday. There's an Evil Hat game night with them and Start Playing. So they partnered to host a monthly game night all day, and you can play anything from their sort of selection, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I only found out about that today, so that is pretty cool. But enough about Evil Hat games. Get rid of that. Fate Accelerated. There we go. So first things first. You might be like, Fiona, there's like several different versions of Fate Accelerated, and that is true. So they've done a very handy, slide, which I think is really useful, sort of showing the timeline of how they developed Fate from Evil Hat Productions, and that there are actually three sort of main versions. The big one, Fate Core System, so that's this one here, this sort of big circle here. That is sort of the main one that came out in 2013. And so that is one that you can use in any sort of system. It is any system, sorry, any sort of campaign. If you want to do sci-fi, if you want to do westerns, anything like that. And then you've got these two other variations of it. So Fate Accelerated is the one we're going to look at today. It's a low page count version of Fate. Maybe that's why I chose it. That uses approaches instead of skills. So there's a big difference there in terms of the mechanics, which we'll get onto in a second. But it blends easily with anything from core. So for example, these other RPG systems, setting, like campaign settings. There you go. I'm sort of losing my mind already. You can sort of swap it in and out as well. Hello, Detective Butts. Thanks for being here. Hope you're going to enjoy this random. I think we just got started. I'm explaining all the different versions of Fate. So it's all good. Yes, it's definitely you. I can see. I hope you're doing well. So that's Fate Accelerated on one side, and then on the other side, you have this other one called Fate Condensed, which basically is Fate core compressed down to the essentials with a few minor updates after a couple of years of experience. So that's 2020. I would say I've only played Fate Accelerated myself. We did it on the podcast ages ago, like really early on in the first couple of years. And it's a really good one to get started with. But if you were like, oh, I want to go big, I think Fate Condensed is probably the better one to go for, because I will say the Fate Core one is about 300 pages long when I had a quick look at it just now. And I was like, ugh, yikes, in general. But that's just good to know, so that if you'll put in Fate Evil Hat Productions, they might go, which version? The other thing you can notice on this wonderful PDF is that some of the example settings and campaigns, etc. So the one I wanted to quickly talk about is Dresden Files and Dresden Files Accelerated. So that tonight is what I'm recording. So we did our first episode. I was a guest on a podcast called Rendezvous with Destiny with my friends Am, Chloe, Lush, and Will, who very kindly invited me on. And we had a really good time. The first couple of episodes are coming out just now. And then we're recording the rest of it tonight, which is fantastic. Problem is, I've completely forgotten how to play. It's been about a month and a half, so I'm like, uh-oh. So I thought, why don't I, in an attempt to sort of get back into sort of reading about it, why don't I just do it on stream as well, you know? And so you all have to suffer from it as well. So let's click over tab. So this is what it looks like. The other thing I will mention, actually, let me find it on my Google, because I did have it. Putting it back up. Is that going to work? No. Of course it doesn't work. But, oh, wait. There's a lot of this going on. Drive-through RPG? There we go. So what I would say, if you want to get your own copy of Fate, the three main core rules, so that one I was saying before, so Fate Condensed, the core system, and Fate Accelerated, it's pay what you want pretty much everywhere, which is fantastic, I think. To get a physical copy obviously costs a little bit, but all of the core mechanics is like free, essentially, and they've got their own sort of source document as well, so that if you want to build a game, if you're doing any world building, I definitely check that out as well, because they've got some really good Creative Commons licenses for that as well. So that's the only thing I wanted to mention, actually, is that if you're like, you want to read along at home, it doesn't have to cost you anything. But obviously I would always give back if can, because it's all good. Right, back to it. That's what I remember. So let's go dive into it. I'll read the back of it so you can all hear it. So, your story full speed ahead. With only a few minutes of prep, you could be exploring the universe. My eyes are you could be exploring the universe with your favourite sci-fi characters, fighting the forces of evil with a party of talking chimps, or setting up shop as a modern-day sorcerer specialising in love potions. Maybe you're looking for the ideal pick-up role-playing game. Or maybe you're a first-time gamer looking to try something without investing hours of your time. We've all been there. Regardless, Fate Accelerated Edition brings something special to your table. Fate Accelerated, or FAE, is a condensed version of the popular Fate core. And then we get the condensed version a couple of years later. That brings all the flexibility and power of Fate in a shorter format. Inside, you'll find a method for making fast, fun characters and simple systems to support whatever story you can dream up on the fly. With FAE, you could be playing in minutes. And then there's a countdown and it says game on. Great. Gosh. Obviously, here are all writers and core developers. Good. Evil Hat Productions, hello. Fred Hicks is the name you'll always hear about bandied around a bit, and Mike Oslo as well. Good stuff. So when did this officially come out? So 2013. So that, this game's over 10 years old. So sad. In minutes, but I know. You're with me. It's going to be like an hour and a half before we get to character creation. Let's look at the content. Zoom out a little bit so we can all of it. No, we don't need to. It's fine. So, always with these RPGs, you always have that bit at the beginning about, what do you mean? Tell stories. How do we roleplay, etc. And I've talked about it previously, where I do really like having these in books, because I feel like I mentioned this last time, but in an RPG I read recently, so Die the RPG, there was a very sort of like I think it was a joke essentially, but it did say, "What is an RPG?" And then underneath it was like a sentence saying, "Google actual play RPG, watch one." And you're like, "All right, dude, there's no need to be like that," because some people don't get it. But I understand it. 'Cause sometimes you have lots of big essays about what a role-playing game is, and actually, I don't think there is like a definition now of what one is anymore. Like certainly in Die, for example, you have so many different levels of like bit of LARPing, bit of actual role-playing, etc. It's terrible in that sort of sense. Like I think it's just we want to find a way we can easily introduce people to role-playing games. Similar thing in improv. Sometimes you'll go to an improv show and you'll have the host and you'll be like, all right, we're going to play a game called Pan Left. And then they spend 2 or 3 minutes explaining what Pan Left is while setting up. And obviously, as an improviser, I'm like, I know what Pan Left is. It's a TV choice show where we see people in various hijinks and we cut when the action's getting exciting, etc. But, someone in the audience might not have heard of Pan Left. So we need to find a way to easily communicate what it is. But I think we just need to be quicker and more efficient at it. So that's the only thing as well. Yeah, in minutes. I'm glad everyone else has got unique selling point. We can create characters and games in minutes. With this game as well, it also talks about what kind of characters you want to be. Because again, that's another thing we find in role-playing games, right? You might be invited to play like a Dungeons & Dragons game or Starfinder or something like that, and they'll be like, all right, what character are you playing? And you don't get a pre-gen. And sometimes you're like, oh God, I could be anything. And then you have a galaxy brain moment of going, I could be anything. I really struggle with that. I think I only have in my back pocket maybe about 5 different characters. And one of them, as Carrie probably knows, is always sick. It's always someone being sick or someone having a hangover and stuff like that. So it's quite nice to have that sort of little introduction being like, you could be anything. Here's some things to think out by. And then how do you make it? Which I think that will be the character creation, which we can get onto. How to do stuff. So this is going to be the important chapter for us today. It's like, how do we choose outcomes? How do we like roll dice, etc. for this game? One thing I'll show, actually, if I go back to Big Cam with big moon face here. So in Fate, in general, you use something called fudge dice or fate dice. And this is where the camera's not going to fit. So they are just very... I always play games that have specialized dice. These are dice that have crosses and minuses on them. On a d6. You can use ordinary d6s as well. There's a little table somewhere that tells you what to do with them. But essentially, they're supposed to add, you'll have a certain number, and then you roll, I think it's 2 of these dice, and then they will add and take away, and that will be like the success ladder. I'm about to go actually read it, and it will tell me that I'm completely right, or I'm completely wrong as well. What's the blank spot? Very good question, but it just means nothing. Nothing is added and nothing is taken away. So you get 2 of those, and you get 2 pluses, and you get 2 minuses. So yeah, so you could roll 2 pluses and do really well, or you could have a plus and a minus, and those cancel each other out, or nothing at all. So there's that little bit of risk in there as well. Carrie, ooh. Hey, Dan! Yes, I did use your title. So full disclosure, Dan sort of mentioned it in his stream last night, saying, you should just call it Too Long. Didn't listen, Tabletop RPGs. And I was like, that makes more sense than me going, buh. So brilliant. Carrie, what are you reading there? Haha, I feel you on the void of possibility of being a creativity killer. Blah. So yes, using tarot cards or roll tables or things to help you prompt those images so much. So true. I would recommend, if you're interested, it's typically all my books are too far away, but there is James D'Amato, who is, or it was, the host of the One Shot podcast. One of those podcasts that do one shots. He wrote lots of books about world building and character stuff, and it's just lots of prompts depending on the system or the genre that you're trying to do. And I actually did some on DM's Book Club. I did it with the old previous host Ryan, and it was quite good because we could it could be a certain situation. It could really sort of define what your character is from a particular moment, like a backstory moment, or trying to what is their goal or motivation. So that's a little bit more unusual on that front. Hey. Yes, everyone's saying hello. Fantastic. Great. You're all getting on fine without me. And then next you've got challenges, consents, contests, and conflicts. Oh, I should change back to the actual thing so you don't have to look at my face in so much big detail. And then damage, stress, and consequences, aspects, and fate points. So aspects are the important things here. This is what the sort of unique selling point is of Fate itself, which we'll get onto. Stunts, again, we'll get onto that. character advancement we might not get to, and then at the end you've got some like how to be the GM, which might be useful again if we've got time for it, and then some example characters which we can also look to as well. And then of course the best part is a quick reference PDF at the end. So in total, it's about 50 pages, which is one of the longer ones I've looked at on this channel. But compared to some of the other ones, I think the longest one I've read was Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. And most of that was, to be fair, chapters to play in. That's 600 pages. And we're not looking at that. We might look at the first 2 pages of that at some point. So let's just dive in. We're not going to look at the first 2 chapters, because hopefully you all know what a role-playing game is. Actually, what we'll do, we'll look at the characters one, and maybe that'll be a little bit different. So, best part about this PDF, I discovered, it's bookmarked. So I can just jump links. I don't have to scroll about like a loser. Let's see, how are we doing? Yes, that sounds great. Thanks for the right. No worries. Is this a system I've played before? Yes, Butts, I have. It was a long time ago. It was when I first started so what am I rolling? And I wanted to try out the aspects part of it, which we'll get into. With it, I was only 2 players in it. It was my friend Evelyn, and then our mutual friend Lucy. We played about superheroes. And the idea I had in my head for the story was that we were going to play. It was when Marvel was really big, like not as big as it is now, but when it was like starting to become really big and like, oh yeah, superhero movies, they're really cool, right? So I wanted to come up with the idea of a superhero HQ in London, where all the A-list superheroes were being taken for sensitivity training or diversity training, and then the B superheroes were on standby, and they had to go and solve things, and so that's what we did. Obviously, at this time, I hadn't heard of the Amazon Prime series called The Boys. But that's what I had in my head, but to a less violent degree. But I can definitely recommend. I can recommend a series for sure. I'll work out what the episode title is at the end. Hey, it's a Hamilton. Hey, how are you doing, man? Yes, everyone's in here now. Maybe I should do streams straight after 5 more often. All right, let's dive in. What kind of character can I play? Think about the setting you've decided to play in and make that your main guide. Are you playing in a school for young sorcerers? Nah, don't think so. Play a young sorcerer. Are you playing space pilots fighting the evil empire? Nah, I don't think so. Play a space pirate. 2 settings I do not want to play in. Make sure your character has a reason to interact and cooperate with the characters the other players are making. So already I like how the book is already aimed towards players first. A lot of RPG books, they always have like the first bit is for the players and getting them excited about character creation, and then right at the end there'll be like a little section saying, if you've got this far, welcome GM. And some of the other books are obviously talking about like, these are GM only, don't look at these. Usually you have them split up. Certainly with our D&D ones that we've looked at for Planescape and whatnot, they usually are split up in some way. No beans, Hamilton. Ridiculous. Excellent. Right. How do I make a character? So time to start writing stuff down. So guys, let's find out. Shall we do it together? Let's try it. So grab a pencil and a copy of the character sheet. Cool. I don't have a copy of the character sheet to hand. Maybe there's one at the back that I can sort of look at. There's one. So this is what it looks like. It's, again, very straightforward, very clean. I seem to remember. Yes. There we go. Oh, I remember this, and the approaches and all sorts. Right, I'm going to do some flicking back and forth, because that's what I'm going to do. I said I wasn't going to do this. Now I'm doing it. There we go. What kind of character do you want to be? That's fine, but you may definitely want to have something that lets you erase and change. Yeah. So, aspects. Right. Aspects is a word. I don't know if you can hear the rozzers outside my door. They clearly... up. I'm trying to read an RPG here. An aspect is a word, phrase, or sentence that describes something centrally important to your character. It can be a motto your character lives by, a personality quirk, or a description of a relationship you have with another character, an important possession, or a bit of equipment that your character has, or any part of your character that is vitally important. What? So yes, I remember this. An aspect, it's just, yeah, it could be anything. It could be anything. So if I was talking about myself just now, some aspects that I might have as Fiona would be host of What Am I Rolling, a tabletop RPG one-shot podcast, or co-host of the DM's book club, that sort of thing. Harried woman in her 30s. streaming on Twitch. Aspects allow you to change the story that ties in with your character's tendencies, skills, or problems. So checking the chat. Okay, there's Beans chat going on. This is nothing to do with the RPG. I'll let you guys continue on there. They like to change your story, blah, blah, blah. You can use them to establish facts about the setting, such as the presence of magic or the existence of a useful ally, dangerous enemy, or secret organizations. So that's the thing. So you have sort of character aspects yourself, but also have setting or scene aspects. So aspects is sort of banded around a little bit, but just to know that anything can be an aspect, essentially. Your character has a handful of aspects between 5 and 3, including a high concept and a trouble. I remember this now. So when I ran my RPG for improvisers workshop, I made this into like an exercise. So basically, we'd have one person being the character, and then the other 4 improvisers around them. One of them would give them the high concept, one of them would give them the trouble, and then the other 2 would give them some aspects. And I know it's going to talk about what the high concept and trouble is now, because I can see it. I can see a bloody sitting there. Hello, Billiam Babble. I'm going to say all these names wrong. So nice to see you. Excellent. Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie. I speak a lot of truths, but mostly about myself. I didn't mean to get you in there as well. All right, Bean chat is still going. Bean gate is happening. High concept. Decide on your character's high concept. This is a single phrase or a sentence that neatly summarizes your character, saying who you are, what you do, and what your deal is. When you think about your high concept, try to think of 2 things. How this aspect could help you, and how might it make things harder for you. Good high concepts do both. So we've got some examples here, like feline captain of the Syrah Skimmer, Suncaller of the Andrel Desert, chief field agent for the IGM MA. So yes, so all those are like almost like job titles, aren't they? The one I always think of, and I know it's Harry Potter. I'm desperately trying to think of anything else, but I just don't read anymore. But like boy wizard, a boy who lived wizard, that sort of thing, which is good and bad. Trouble. Next, decide on the thing that will always get you into trouble. It could be a personal weakness or a recurring enemy or an important obligation. Anything that makes your life complicated. How about just bloody going to work? Having to be an adult, professional adult. I did that once. I did that in an improv scene. I said I don't want to be a professional adult before, and everyone laughed at me. And I was like, no, that's a genuine fear of mine, that I have to look around for an adult. And there isn't one, so it's me. So I have to pretend and get paid for being an adult. It's just terrifying, I know. One of my aspects would be a bean enjoyer. Yes, thank you, Detective Buzz. Well, put that as your high concept. You are an enjoyer of beans. All those in the chat who are doing this. Oh God, what else? Did play Corpo in Cyberpunk? Waking up, great mind. Okay, cool. So what's our trouble, guys? Let's see. Anything that makes your life complicated. So here we've got Steel Assassins want me dead. Cast now, ask questions later. Oh, it must be like casting spells, right? Gotta look out for my little brother. Yeah, again, these don't have to be related to like an organization. Like obviously we've got enemies in that first one there, but it could literally be like a personality quirk. I remember when I was looking up stuff for when I was doing my workshop, that I had to look up, say, what good characters could you have in Fate? And somebody was like, someone's high concept was like knows everything, and then the trouble was, in quotation marks, knows everything. Which I quite liked. I thought that worked quite well. Another aspect. Now, compose another aspect. Think of something really important or interesting about your character. Are they the strongest person in their hometown? Do they carry a mighty sword known throughout history? Do they talk too much? Are they filthy rich? And then you could add 1 or 2 more aspects on that to really sort of branch it out. These might describe your character's relationship with other player characters or with an NPC. Or with a third aspect, it might describe something that you're particularly interested in about your character. If you prefer, you can leave one or both of these spaces blank now and come back and fill them in after the game has started. So when I gave this example to the improv group, who had never played a role-playing game before, so again, I used the Harry Potter example, so like, Harry Potter, boy wizard, defeater of Voldemort, who is returning, plays Quidditch, I don't know, hates Slytherin. I don't know. So those sort of things. So those aspects, ideally, they don't have to be connected to the high high concept and the trouble, they could be something like a little bit further out. So almost like if you imagine, we call it tent poles in improv. So like if you get the suggestion at the top, and then you have one tent pole. So if the suggestion is weddings or church, you're always like, where do we find our place? Oh, in the church. Okay, so like, okay, where do we go from here? Oh, you can have a wedding, so that's one tent pole. And then you want to go, okay, for the next scene, we want to get further away from that. What could it be? It could be people getting ready for midnight mass. Maybe you're going to go out to the graveyard or something like that. So that's what I would suggest with something like this, is that if you're creating a character, trying to think of unusual aspects that aren't related to that high concept or the trouble per se. They could be, but it's more interesting to have those characters who aren't like that. And then it builds up a bigger picture. It's more often, it's something that what I discovered with improvisers is that when you give them all this information, like boy wizard, the boy who lived, killed Voldemort, plays Quidditch, and I go, right, I need you to do a monologue now. They'll try and fit all three of those things in. Realistically, your character's not going to give away all that stuff as soon as you meet them. Otherwise, they're incredibly needy, right? I know I always talk about it, but the Between by Jason Cordova, the whole point of that game is that you don't have any backstory until the mechanic requires you to have it. So I think, again, just being careful that you'll have all this information, but you don't have to give it out straight away as soon as you play in the first couple of sessions. You can keep some of it yourself. And then finally, describe your character's appearance and give them a name. And look, one of the great things about Fate is that they'll have these little boxes, so you could be like, hey, you don't want to read 2 pages? Here's a small box with like 50 words in it. Oh, very good. What we're going for it. Great minds be like, friend of dogs and other friendly furry animals. Couldn't say that when you're drunk. Sword, indeed, dead toothbrush. I've always wanted to play a wildman kind of feral. Hey, do it. I don't know what game you're playing in. I would do it. Need to have additional outer interest to make them actually feel 3D relatable. Exactly, Carrie Trickfoot, exactly. Right, here we go. Approaches. Choose your approaches. Approaches are descriptions about how you accomplish tasks. Everyone has the same 6 approaches. Careful, clever, flashy, forceful, quick, and sneaky. Each approach is rated with a bonus. Choose 1 at good, so +3, 2 at fair, which is +2, 2 at average, +1, and 1 at mediocre, 0. You can improve these later. We'll talk about how each of these approaches mean and what they do stuff in the how to do stuff section. Approaches say a lot about how you are. Here's some examples. So at the bottom, we'll come to the ladder of success in a second. These are like archetype examples we've got here. So if you wanted to play like a brute type thing, so someone that's very, I would say very muscly, maybe Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. Here would be an example like, it seems very muscly, very sort of, your attention's going to get to you, but maybe not so much in the intellect department, perhaps. Who knows? Same with the All-Star as well. They're probably quick and they're quite flashy, etc. But maybe less good at sneaky stuff. Yeah, all good stuff. You would have terrible careful Hamilton. Like, what's that noise? Oh, it's Hamilton. Where is he? You actually, no, your sneak would be probably quite good because we won't know where you are at any time. Sorry, that is... I feel very mean today. Okay, in Fate, we use the ladder of adjectives and numbers to rate a character's approach. The result of the roll and difficulty ratings for simple checks. The ladder. So here's the ladder. So anything with a +8 at the end of the result is going to be a legendary thing, all the way down to terrible. You see what I mean? So that's just something to keep in mind. We're going to go on to it in a little bit more detail, but yeah, here's the ladder, so you know. So it can go anywhere from between -2 to +8 in terms of results and in terms of your approaches as well. Detective Butts. Raised by wolves but over time his wolf tendencies started to become more domestic dog-like tendencies. Like, tries to bring in a big stick inside, but it is too big for the door. Oh no! Gets really excited when anyone comes back after leaving for 5 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's me. That's me right now. Okay, next part, stunts and refresh. A stunt is a special trait that changes the way an approach works for your character. Generally, stunts give you a bonus, almost always +2, and a certain approach when it's used with a particular action under certain circumstances. We'll talk more about stunts in the stunt section. Choose 1 stunt to start, or you can wait and add a stunt during the game. Later, when your character advances, you can choose more. I seem to remember you just make up what the stunt is. It has to be like vague enough that you would use it, but maybe it's, it's that sort of weird thing where it's specific circumstances, but also vague, so you don't be like, I don't know, when it's over 30 degrees, I can fly. How often is that going to happen? I think it gives an example here. Excuse me. If it's your first time playing a Fate game, you might find it easier to pick your first stunt after you had a chance to play for a bit. Excuse me, Burpy McBurt face here. Give you an idea of what a good stunt might be. Add it during your first session. On the other hand, if you're, like me, an experienced Fate gamer, you might look ahead and discover that, just like in Fate Core, your character is entitled to 3 free stunts before it starts costing you a refresh. In that case, let the least experienced member of your group be your guide. If someone is new to the game and is only taking 1 to start with, that's what everyone should do. If you're all experienced and you want to start with more powerful characters, just take all 3 at start and off you go. Thanks, game. So, your refresh is the number of Fate points you begin each game session with, unless you ended up the previous session with more unspent Fate points on your refresh. In that case, you start with that number. By default, it starts at 3, and it is reduced by 1 for each stunt after the first 3 you choose. Essentially, your first 3 stunts are free. So that's how you pay for doing these really cool things, because presumably your stunt's going to add a +2. That's quite a big thing in this game as well, right? So, if your first 3 are free, and then you're like, whoa, hang on, you got to pay the refresh toll on that front. And we saw where you have those on those character sheets. Well, you have it here. The approaches are, and there's look, even in the sheet it says high concept and trouble. How cool is that? All right. How cool is it? It's not very. All right, how are we doing in the chat? So stunts are specific abilities. They could be. We'll come on to it properly. I think it talks about it, but basically it is something that you would add to a scene. It's like an individual aspect that you can do yourself. Whereas, say, for example, environmental aspects, anyone can invoke. Again, we'll get into this a little bit, because we're jumping ahead a little bit, but your own stunt is something that your character can do yourself. So, for example, if you were playing something like Batman, maybe your stunt is to do a sick donut in the Batmobile, right? So that you can invoke that yourself because you have the Batmobile, you are Batman, but also it's I'm trying to think. Oh, you're in a car chase, you're trying to outrun Commissioner Gordon. Sorry, I had a weird thing. I was like, it's Commissioner Gordon, not Conditioner Gordon. I saw a TikTok or something ages ago where it was like Batman, or Bat Shampoo and Conditioner Gordon. So, Conditioner Gordon, no! Anyway, just laughing about myself. Yeah, whenever you can be Batman, absolutely. I mean, there was something else I saw recently, which was like, aren't we all Spider-Man? I think we are. All right, how to do stuff. Outcomes, actions, and approaches. It's now time to start doing stuff. Leap from one moving train car to another. You need to search the entire library for that spell you really need. You need to distract the guards so you can sneak into the fortress. How do you figure out what happens? Well, let this book tell you, okay? First, you narrate what your character's going to do. Your character's own aspects provide a good guide for what you can do. If an aspect that suggests you can perform magic, then you can cast a spell. If an aspect describes you as a swordsman, you can draw the blade and have at it. So yeah, exactly. So you might be the only person in your party that has magic, if the game setting allows it. But if you've got an aspect that says can do magic or as a spellcaster, or if it's in that high concept, then yeah, you can do that. So that's what's really cool about this, is that each character is very customizable to you guys as the players, which I love. You don't get a bonus from your magic or your sword unless you choose to spend a fate point to invoke the appropriate aspect. Okay. So, I mean, I could just read the 30-second version, couldn't I? But I'm not going to. So how do you know if you've been successful? Often you just succeed because the action isn't hard and no one's trying to stop you. But if failure provides an interesting twist in the story or something unpredictable could happen, you need to break out the dice. So, yes. Dice or cards? I forgot you could use cards in this. Whoa. Let's see. We love a sheet that's easy to read, to fill in, and understand. Absolutely, I agree. And it's on 1 page. The amount of times I've seen RPGs that have character sheets that go over 3 pages, and the information I need is on the back page. I definitely went through, I think it would have been a Warhammer Wrath and Glory one, where I didn't know I could do certain things until we got to the very end. It's like, you could use the spell, and I'm like, it's not on my character sheet. Somebody told me to flip over. Oh, embarrassing. Oh, I agree, Butts. I agree. What, Dan? Dan, don't do work. Oh. Rubbish. When part of determining your outcome is generating a random number, which is usually done in one of two ways: either rolling 4 fate dice, or drawing a card from the deck of fate. Cool. So fate dice, sometimes called fudge dice, after the game they were originally designed for. Did not know that. I'll have to look that game up. Are one way to determine outcomes. You always roll fate dice in a set of 4, and each dice will come up with a minus, a blank, or a plus, and you add them together to get the total of your roll. And so I'm going to... Sorry, I've got them here. That's a lot of blank faces. Yeah, all blanks. Fiona, the average human, rolled all blanks. Deck of Fate is a card deck that copies the statistical spread of fate dice. You could choose to use them instead of that one of them. Either one works great. I didn't know there was a deck of fate. That sounds really cool, but I wouldn't want to mix them up with like a proper deck if I was going to play something. It's like, oh, these cards are blank. What are you trying to pull, Fiona? These rules are written with the assumption that you are rolling fate dice, but whichever one you use, your group prefers. Anytime you roll dice, you can always means to draw from deck of fate as well. The other thing I'd say as well, and I'm sure it says it later as well, that you could just use ordinary d6s, and as long as you say 1 to 2 is a minus, 3, 4 is blank, and 5 and 6 is a plus, I would recommend doing that as well. Because this is the thing, like, let me tell you how expensive this 4 dice were. £13. Now I know I'm a mug, right? I'm a complete mug. But I wanted to use it because sometimes I really struggle with, like, I think I said this before, if I'm using normal dice, normal d6s, then trying to translate it in my head, it's like learning a different language, is it? You can do it, but I need help. Rubbish indeed, yes. All right, outcome. So once you've rolled your dice, you add your approach bonus, and any bonuses from aspects or stunts. Compare that to the target number, which is either a fixed difficulty or the result of the GM's roll for an NPC, so like an opposed dice. Based on that, your outcome is either you fail, if your total is less than your opponent's total. It's a tie, if it's equal to the opponent's total. You succeed if it's greater than your opponent's total, or most importantly, you succeed with style if your total is at least 3 times greater than your opponent's total. Man, I butchered that last sentence up, but it's pretty good. Succeed with style. So those approaches bonuses. So that was the thing we were talking about before when you assigned it. So if I rolled all blanks, but I was using the approach of Fiona, what are you doing? What are you doing, Fiona? What are you doing? Stop panicking. Stop panicking. It's fine. There. So, if I was using, say, if I was using flashy, and I'd rated it as like a fair, so +2. My overall result would be a +2, and that's not with, and obviously if I could then invoke other things like stunts and aspects, which would then bounce it up the ladder a bit as well. So good to know. Hamilton, I mean, how much do you spend on... Oh, there's some shade being thrown in the chat. I came here to read RPGs, Hamilton. I mean, how much did you spend on tabletop RPG, Star Wars tabletop RPG books at MCM? Right, let me tell you, unless it's by illegal downloads, getting Fantasy Flight tabletop RPG PDFs of certain books is nigh on impossible because of various licensing issues. I spent a lot of money on those 2 books. Have I read them? No. All right. Let's see. Actions. So you've narrated what your PC is trying to do, and you've established there's a chance you could fail. Next, to figure out what the action best describes what you're trying to do. There are 4 basic actions that cover anything you do in the game. Create an advantage. I was going to say it's create an advantage, overcome, attack, and defend. Those are the 4 things there. An advantage is the main one that will probably be happening for you. That's when you aspects, I seem to remember. So let's read it through. Creating an advantage is anything you do to try and help yourself or one of your friends. Taking a moment to carefully aim your proton blaster, spending several hours doing research in the school library, or tripping the thug who's trying to rob you, all these count as creating an advantage. The target of your action may get a chance to use the defend action to stop you. I'll get onto that in a second. But the advantage lets you create. The advantage you create lets you do one of the 3 following things. So, create a new situation aspect. So we were talking about before those environmental aspects. So that's where it would come into here. discovering an existing situation aspect or another character aspect that you didn't know about, or take advantage of an existing aspect anyway. Okay, so then you're going to go into a bit more details. Oh, the excuses. Yeah, there is no excuse. It's fine. Also, yikes. We do not need to talk about how much money went on tabletop RPG books at MCM. Eek. I agree, Terry. You know what? As a rule, let's not name and shame. let's be good about it. Let's not also say how much we spent at UK Games Expo either the weekend after. So, if you're creating a new aspect or discovering an existing one, here's what you will do if you have, depending on the success levels we talked about before. So if you fail, either you don't create or discover it at all, or you do create and discover it, but the opponent gets to invoke the aspect for free. That's quite a challenging thing, right? You could be in the middle of a fight, and for example, you might create the aspect of, what's the word? Not construction. Oh, this is where my brain breaks down. Yeah, like the building poles maintenance works, essentially. You know, where, like up a building construction poles. Yeah, building construction poles. And you'd be like, oh, it's crumbling or something like that. So yes, you might discover it, but you fail at that task. You don't succeed at the difficulty check, or the opponent rolls higher than you. That could mean that if you're fighting someone, they might grab one of those poles and be able to invoke the aspect that you created, so that those building poles or building construction stuff for free. They don't have to spend anything for it. The second option works best if the aspect you create or discover is something that other people could take advantage of, like rough terrain. Okay. I should read ahead, shouldn't I, really? You may have to reword the aspect to show that it benefits the other character instead of you. Work it in however makes sense with the player who gets it to the invocation. Ooh. You can still invoke the aspect if you'd like, but it will cost you a fate point. So that's it. If your fate, those refresh points as well, those fate points, sorry. Yes, refresh and fate points are slightly separate, I seem. No. Basically, you have to spend fate points to invoke. Yes. Words strong. If you tie, if you're creating a new aspect, you get a boost. Name it and invoke it once for free. After that, the boost goes away. If you're trying to discover an existing aspect, you could treat this as a success. Here's the one thing I would say with creating aspects. It goes back to that sort of improv rule of like having to work together to collaborate on it, because you might be like, I have absolutely no idea. And to be honest, I didn't when I ran the game either. So it was coming up with stuff. Usually it is something about maybe an appearance or maybe a physicality that I was doing, but it doesn't have to be limited to that at all. It could be like the weather. It could be a busy street down in Soho, that sort of thing. But you just have to maybe think a little bit outside the box, and hopefully you have a game master who is used to doing that and is used to helping you out in that as well. Yeah, all right, chat. Damn. So yeah, and the boost, yeah, so that's that thing where you can invoke it for free, but it goes away. So it's like a one and done, essentially, that kind of aspect for it. If you succeed, you create and discover the aspect, and you and an ally, and you or an ally may invoke it for free. So that's really cool. And yeah, here's the thing: you write the aspect of the environment on a card or a sticky note and place it on the table. Obviously, this book was written before online games, but again, you can do the same thing. If you share like a Miro board, or if you're one of those people that does like Roll20, etc., you could put post-it notes or little boxes with it on there as well. Sorry, I have to read this out now. Hello? Is this Dan's boss? Yeah, Dan's making emojis in the chat when he should be working. I'll tell him. Detective Butts. He says you're fired, Dan. Oh, what's that? The taste of deliciousness. Oh, hey girls from these worlds. How are you doing today? You caught me in the middle of talking about Fate Accelerated. Hope you're doing all well. Oh, wrong account. No worries. I assume it is Darcy. Hopefully see you on your right account in a second. You succeed with style. You create or discover the aspect, and you or an ally may invoke it twice for free. So obviously, more success, the better it is. Perceived. I see you. Cool. So yeah, so that's if you're creating an advantage. So if that's your action, those are the things to follow from there. If you're trying to take an advantage of a situation, so yeah, that was before when you're creating an advantage, now you're looking at an aspect that's already out there on the table. If you fail, you don't get any additional benefits from it. You can still invoke it in future, but it will be at the cost of a fate. So you just fail, and so, that is what it is. I know, right? I know, Dan. What's going on? I'm just talking about role-playing games. If you tie or succeed when trying to take advantage of an aspect you already know about, you get 1 free invocation of the aspect for you or an ally to use later. You might want to draw a circle or box on the aspect's note card and check it off when the invocation is used. Or you succeed with style, you get 2 of those free invocations, which you can let an ally use if you want to. It's all here. Thank God. It's all a little bit. I think I would just print out these little black boxes and put them everywhere, to be honest with you. Makes it easier. But we've still got overcome, attack, and defend. Overcome, I guess, is overcoming a challenge, and the attack and defend are definitely more, I would assume, for combat. So, the other action you could do, excuse me, the overcome action. When you have to get past something that's between you and a particular goal, such as picking a lock, escaping from handcuffs, leaping across a chasm, flying a spaceship through an asteroid field, the classics, you use the overcome action. Taking some action to eliminate or change an inconvenient situation usually involves overcoming in the overcome action. We talk more about this in aspects and fate points. We'll get to that. But if you fail, you roll your fates and you don't succeed, you have a tough choice to make. You can simply fail. The door is still locked. The thug still stands between you and the exit. The enemy spaceship is still on your tail. Or you can succeed, but at a serious cost. Maybe you drop something vital that you were carrying. Maybe you suffer harm. The GM, i.e. me, helps to figure out what the appropriate cost is. God, that's the one thing I hate about role-playing games, is that, it's when they roll and you go, oh, a mixed success. And I go, oh, now I need to think what's, you succeed, but at a cost. I don't know, you dropped your wallet. Your phone doesn't have signal. I'm an all-or-nothing GM. I'm very much like that. If you tie, you attain your goal, but at some minor cost. Is that not the same thing? The GM could introduce a complication or present you with a tough choice. So I guess, with that fail one, you either fail or you succeed at the cost. Whereas if you tie, you will succeed without the cost. C, succeeding at a cost in running game in the Fate core book. That's a different book. I have to go to a different book to understand what that means. If you succeed, you accomplish what you were trying to do. The lock springs open, you duck around the thug blocking the door, and you manage to lose the alien spaceship on your tail. All 3 of those things succeed. Yeah, Dance Boss? Yeah, I was commenting about how lit the chat is. I quote, the chat is popping off today. Okay, I'll tell him. Dan, you're hired again and fired for the 2nd time. Ah, gosh. It's great. It's great. I love you guys. If you succeed, you accomplish what you're trying to do. Yeah, I've said that. You succeed. Success is above, but you also gain a boost. Excellent. Okay, attack. Use an attack when you're trying to hurt someone, whether physically or mentally. We'll talk about this in ouch, damn, ouch, damage, stress, and consequences. But the important thing is, if somebody gets hurt too badly, they're knocked out of the scene. I think that's interesting because you've got stress boxes down here and consequences, but you don't have anything that's directly hit points in this game, I seem to remember. It's something to do with the stress and the consequences. Those are sort of like your injury boxes, I believe, from that point. Typically, now I've lost my place. I also gained target of it. Yeah. All right. Target of your attack gets a chance to defend. So yeah, so that attack and defend that are on this page, you can get back and forth. I assume it's a bit more loosey-goosey in that sort of sense that you're not trying to. There's no initiative order. It's more like a loose sort of more combat thing. Hey, well, if you fail when you do an attack, it doesn't connect. Fair enough. Oh, I like this. The target parries your sword, your shot misses, your target laughs off your insult. If you tie with an attack action, your attack doesn't connect strongly enough to cause any harm, but you gain a boost, a little bit of an advantage next time, perhaps. If you succeed, your attack hits and you do damage. See, ouch, damage, stress, and consequences. Hooray. And if you succeed with style, you hit and do damage, plus you have the option to reduce the damage your hit causes by 1 and gain a boost. Ooh, so you have a little bit of diciness with that. That's quite cool. Like, Like you can yeah, that'd be quite cool. That you actually gain the upper hand, maybe that they drop their weapon, or maybe you get them in a headlock, perhaps, at the cost of not hurting them. Finally, we've got defend. So use defend when you're actively trying to stop someone from doing any of the other 3 actions. You're parrying the sword strike, trying to stay on your feet, blocking a doorway, and the like. Usually, this action is performed on somebody else's turn. Ah, there you go. Reacting to the attempt to attack, overcome, and create an advantage. Okay, so that's good to know. You may roll to oppose some non-attack actions or to defend against an attack on. If you can explain why you can. Oh, that's cool. So if somebody is attacking maybe your, I was going to say colleague, a member of your group or your party, you could sort of intervene if you have a reasonable justification for it. That's quite cool. I like that. It doesn't have to be that particular person that is defending against it. But when you do, you become the target for any bad results. That makes sense. That would be rubbish otherwise. Detective Bucks just giving Dan a taste of his own medicine. I know, right? Oh, bless him. If you fail on defending, you are on the receiving end of whatever your opponent's success gives them. That's the thing. The attack could still fail if you're both rubbish at it. Or is it? I don't know. I've just made that up. I'll have to double check that in a second. If you tie or succeed, things don't work out too badly for you. Look at the description of your opponent's action to see what happens. If you succeed with style, with defend, your opponent doesn't get what they want, plus you gain a boost. Oh, I just wish I could zoom in on my eyebrows while I said it. Detective Bus, I just want, let's, hang on. Let's all imagine it. All imagine it. There you go. We all zoomed in, Detective Butts. How's that? I'll allow it. It's fine. Apparently there's some swearing in your thing. Apparently art is a swear, Hamilton. That's brilliant. Let me see. Getting help. An ally can help you perform your action. When an ally helps you, they give up their action for exchange, for the exchange, and describes how they're providing you help, getting a +1 to your roll for each ally that's helping you in that way. That's quite good that, you know, it is their action to help. They don't get a turn in whatever scenario or combat they're doing. Usually 1 or 2 people can help in this way before they start getting in each other's way. The GM can decide how many people can help at once. Good. Ways with the... So, we mentioned before, in Who Do You Want to Be, there are 6 approaches to how you perform actions. You've got careful, clever, flashy, forceful, quick, and sneaky. Excuse me. Yes, so careful action is when you play close attention to detail and take your time to do the job right. Lining up a long-range arrow shot, attentively standing and watching, disarming a bank alarm system. Okay. A clever action requires you to think fast, solve problems, or account for complex variables. Finding a weakness in an enemy's swordsman's style. Finding a weak point in a fortress wall. Fixing a computer. Gosh, all 3 of those things, right? That's what I do on a daily basis. I find a weakness in in my work's walls. Flashy. A flashy action draws attention to you. It's full of style and panache. Delivering an inspiring speech to your army, embarrassing your opponent in a duel, or producing a magical firework display. Forceful. Forceful action isn't subtle. It is brute strength. Wrestling a bear, staring down a thug, casting a big, powerful magic spell. Quick action requires you to move quickly and with dexterity. Dodging an arrow, classic. Getting in the first punch, disarming a bomb as it ticks. 3, 2, 1. Ah, disarmed. Don't worry, guys. I disarmed it. Sneaky. A sneaky action is done with an emphasis on misdirection, stealth, or deceit. Talking your way out of getting arrested, picking a pocket, fainting in a sword fight. You can tell I don't read out loud. But so this is the thing. So all these words are really good in the sense of that you can use them for anything. It's just giving you examples of stuff. But like I quite like how it's boiled down to just these 6 stats, as it were, and you can really do a lot with them. Sometimes I think what's one of my biggest gripe with some role-playing games is that here are your attributes. There's like 4 or 5 of them. Great, but here is all the individual skills, which are very, very specific for certain things. Like I don't know, drink alcohol. I hate it as a skill. But I like how, like, for example, drinking alcohol. Like, how do you drink alcohol for this game? Or drink any beverage if you're not into your alcohols? Do you drink it carefully? Like, trying to, if you're doing a drinking competition, trying to out drink the other person, how would you do it? Would you do it quickly? Would you try and carefully do it, or you're being clever? I like how you can choose what the approach is. And for me, I would ask the player, what approach would you be doing? And they always pick the one they're best at, right? And then I'll be like, well, okay, if you're doing it clever, you do have a +2 in it, but what is the, how it describe it? And if I don't agree with the description, then I could be like, I think it's this instead. There you go. What's going on in the chat? Dodging an arrow, classic. Hello, yes please, I would like the t-shirt. Hey, I hear Hamilton is the one for merch, so I'll let him talk about that. Are Doritos crisps, or do you just call them Doritos? Great question, Butts. I'm glad, always on point. Doritos, I call them Doritos. Yeah, I just call them, but for me, they're tortilla chips. That's how I refer to them as. But yeah, I always go, oh, get me some Doritos from the shop. I don't go, get me some crisps that are chilled flavored. Each character has each approach rated in a bonus from 0 to +3. Add the bonus to your dice roll to determine how well your PC performs at the action you described. So, your first instinct is probably to pick the action that gets you the greatest bonus, right? How did you know, Book? But it doesn't work like that. You have to base your choice of approach on the description of your action, and you can't describe an action that doesn't make any sense. Would you forcefully creep through a dark room hiding from the guards? No, that would be sneaky. Would you quickly push that big rock out of the way of the dragon? No, that's being forceful. I love how this book suddenly has sass. Circumstances constrain what approach you can use, so sometimes you have to go with an approach that might not play directly to your strengths. Yes, makes sense. And I think this would be a good game for people who are just starting out. Certainly those people, like myself, looking at the character sheet going, what can I do? And then be like, well, I could do this to this, So you picked your approach, excuse me. We've described the action, you pick the approach, and then you roll the dice and add your bonus. So that's what I did before. If you have a stunt that applies, I'll add that too. And that is your total. And then compare it to what your opponent, usually the GM, has. Decide whether to modify the roll. Finally, you can decide whether you want to alter the roll by invoking aspects. We'll talk about this in aspects and fate. Bearing in mind at the time. Okay, about 45 minutes left. We should be okay. How are we doing in the chat? Already done. Thank you, Hamilton. My merch man there. Agreed. Doritos are tortilla chips, but also an entity in and of themselves. Also, a key component for chips and dip. Indeed. What kind of dip, guys? Also, dip of choice. Mine is tangy cheese. So we've talked about the 4 actions. Create an advantage, overcome, attack and defend, and the 4 outcomes of fail, tide, succeed with style. But in what framework did those happen? Usually, if you want to do something straightforward, all you need to do is make one overcome action, for example, against the difficulty that the GM sets. Look at your outcome and go from there. But sometimes things are a little bit more complex. The challenges. Challenges are a series of overcome and create advantage actions that you use to resolve a especially complicated situation. Each overcome action deals with one task or a part of a situation, and you can take the individual results together to figure out how the situation resolves itself. So that's a very typical thing I would say you would do anyway as a DM, perhaps, in, say, D&D. So, for example, the one, suppose a book I read, typically, can't remember what it's called now, but it's like Collaborate Stories Together, some sort of generic title on Amazon. But it talked about, like, how do you solve people who are at full health, full hit points, full strength when they meet the final boss? You want to make the big boss, if they're steamrolling the big bosses and stuff, how do you make it a bit more challenging for them? And it suggests that to have those many challenges along the way, like they have to get out of the way of a boulder, which they could succeed, but they still lose some hit points, or they drop something, giving those hard choices, which I quite liked. And now every time as a big boss, they always lose some hit points, even if it's just like they scrape their hand. It's like, oh no, you've lost 2 hit points, you're not at full strength. Makes it a little bit easier for me. To set up a challenge, decide what individual tasks or goals make up the situation, and treat each one as a separate overcome roll. Depending on the situation, one character may be required to make several rolls, or multiple characters may be able to participate. GMs, you are obligated to announce all the stages of the challenge ahead of time. Oh, you could be one of those people. Excellent. Just adjust the steps as the challenge unfolds. Things. An example there of a crew. So yeah, let's read it out. Might not make sense to people. The players are a crew of a ship caught in a storm. They decide to press on and try and get to this destination despite the weather, and the GM suggests that sounds like a challenge. Steps in resolving this challenge could be calming the panicky passengers, repairing the damaged rigging, or keeping the ship on the right heading. So yeah, so you can have all the players making rolls for that, and that'd be quite cool actually. Like, I don't want one player to make all the rolls. Salsa for butts, sour cream, and chive girl. I agree, Kerry. A good bean and cheese dip. Lots of dip chaps, but I love it. My boss fight right now is trying not to eat this entire bag of Doritos. Oh no, maybe you get indigestion instead. Contests. So, another type of challenge is that contest. So when two or more characters are competing against one another for the same goal, but it's not directly trying to hurt each other, you have a contest. This could include a card chase, a public debate, or an archery tournament. You know, all three of those classic contests that you're a part of in everyday life. If you're in a card chase on the way to an archery tournament, which is also after the public debate. Or maybe a card chase in between those public debates and the archery competition. Yeah, there's also you've got the public debate at 9, but the archery competition at 10. So you're already dressed and you're in the car. I make myself laugh. Okay, it proceeds in a series of exchanges. An exchange, every participant takes one overcome action to determine how well they do in that leg of the contest. Compare your result to everyone else's. If you got the highest result, you win the exchange and you score a victory, which you can represent as a tally or check mark on a scratch paper. On scratch paper? Scrap paper, I think. Describe how you take the lead. If you succeed with style, you can mark 2 victories. If there's a tie, no one gets a victory, and an unexpected twist occurs. This could mean several things depending on the situation. The terrain or the environment shifts somehow. Very typical in that archery competition, by the way. The parameters of the contest change, or an unanticipated variable shows up and affects all participants. The GM creates a new situation aspect, reflects this change and puts it into play. The first participant to achieve 3 victories wins the contest. That's good. Compared to before when it was like however many challenges or how many people helping in, at least here you're like, whoever gets 3 wins. And that's it. We're not having several rounds of this. And then finally we've got conflicts. So these are used to resolve situations where the characters might be trying to harm one another. Oh, this could be physical harm, or it could be mental harm. Spiritual harm. Excuse me. Oh. A shouting match, a tough interrogation, or a magical physics assault, yeah. Oh, the worst kind of magical assault is the physics one. A psychic assault. Cool. So yeah, got here we go. The conflicts 30-second version here. So this is definitely the combat version. There is determined turn order. It's going to be whoever goes first, right? So, set the scene. What's going on? Where is everyone? And what's the environment like? Who is the opposition? The GM should write a couple of situation aspects on sticky notes or index cards and place them on the table. Players can suggest situation aspects too. So this is really cool. So for each individual sort of combat scenario, I would put maybe down 3 or 4 different kinds of things that are happening. So the one I did for WHERE, which is the Superheroes Bureau in London, they had a big fight in an office building. So I was like putting like a situation aspect of office space, like open plan office, watercolor, offices, that sort of thing, like office chairs, etc. Sort of trying to set out the scene. And I think the players also suggested something. Well, I can't remember off the top. The GM also establishes zones, so these loosely defined areas. You determine the zones based on the scene and following guidelines. Generally, you can interact with each other in the same zone. Yeah, that makes sense. Or in a nearby zone if you can justify acting from a distance. So, for example, if you have a ranged weapon or magical spell. You can move from one zone. You can move one zone for free. An action is required to move if there's an obstacle on the way, such as someone trying to stop you, or if you're trying to move 2 or more zones. Sometimes it's helpful to sketch a quick map to illustrate zones. Or we just use the power. An example of thugs attacking characters in a house. The living room is one zone, the kitchen is another, the front porch is another, and the yard is a 4th. determining turn order. Not gonna lie, I've learned very little about the fate system, but a lot of people have been, but a lot of people's eating habits and career progression. Yep, that's my life, Hamilton. It's all good. Maybe you'll learn something. But hey, you know, we're all friends here. Oh, excuse me. Determine your turn order is a conflict based on your approaches. In a physical conflict, compare your quick approach to the other participants. The one with the fastest reflexes go first. In a mental conflict, compare your careful approach. Attention to detail will warn you of danger. Whoever has the highest approach gets to go first. Then everyone else goes in descending order. Me. Oh. Break ties in whatever manner makes sense with the GM having the last word. Okay, that's great. So, and that's quite cool that it's different for different things as well. So, like, if you're quicker in physical things, but you might not be as careful in a mental conflict. I like that. I like it's careful as well. It's not, like, clever. A bit different. GMs, it's simplest if you pick your most advantageous NPC to determine your place in the turn order and let all your NPCs go at the same time. 100% agree. Just everyone goes at the same time for your enemies. It just makes it easier. No, Hamilton, I know it's all a reflection on me. It's just a lively chat. I know, I'm stunned as well. Excuse me. It's like being at the back of lectures again. Pipe down at the back, please. No more of this bean chat. See me after. This system would be good if I had a character that hulked out like Popeye, but instead of spinach, it's a can of beans. Hey, you know what? In my world, you can do that. What would you... would it still be... I'm sure Popeye does eat beans at some point as well. I know it's mostly spinach. Yeah, well, exchanges. Now, each character takes a turn in an order. On their turn, a character can take 1 of 4 actions. Resolve the action to determine the outcome. The conflict is over when only one side of characters is still in the fight. Good. Oh, excuse me. Okay, ouch, damage, stress, and consequences. Hey, hooray. When you've been hit by an attack, the severity of the hit is the difference between the attack roll and your defense roll, and we measure this in shifts. Okay. For example, if your opponent gets a +5 on the attack, damn, and you get a +3 on your defense, the attack deals 2 shifts of hits, so in total that would be 2. Then, one of 2 things happen. You suffer stress and /or consequences, but you stay in the fight. Or you get taken out, which means you're out of the action for a while. That goes back to this box at the bottom here. So you got 3 stress, 2 also. Oh, I guess that's like how much it is, right? You could... Oh, I see. So like if you take 2 damage, it could be like 2 stress or 2 for that first consequence as well. I'm sure he ate other things, but he's strong to the finish because he eats spinach. It's Popeye the Sailor Man. Oh, their stunts will come to you in a second, hopefully. Ooh. Aspect. Oh. It's... Oh no, consequence. There we go. Let's look at the 30-second version. So each character starts with 3 stress boxes. The severity of hit, which we just talked about, is the attack roll minus the defense roll. When you take a hit, you need to account for how the hit damages you. One way to absorb the damage is to take stress. You check 1 stress off to handle some or all of a single hit. You can absorb a number of shifts equal to the number of the box you check. So 1 for box 1, 2 for box 2, and 3 for box 3. Ooh, okay, I just thought it was like in numerical order. That's good to know. You may also take 1 or more consequences to deal with the hit by marking off 1 or more consequences slots and writing a new aspect to each one. Mild consequence is 2 shifts, moderate is 4, severe is 6. If you can't or decide not to handle the hit, you are taken out. Your opponent decides what happens to you. Giving in before your opponent rolls allows you to control how you exit the scene. You also get 1 or more fate points for doing this. Stress and mild consequences vanish at the end of a scene, provided you get a chance to rest. Other consequences take longer. Man, stress and mild consequences sounds like a Jane Austen novel. I definitely would read that book. Mine would be, I'm strong as a tree because I consume beans. Oh, that's Detective Butts for you. But what is stress, guys? Do we know? Stress represents you getting tired or annoyed, taking a superficial wound, or some other condition that goes away quickly. Your character sheet has a stress track, a row of 3 boxes. When you take a hit, check a stress box, and that resolves the number of shifts equal to the number. 1 shift for 1 box, 2 shifts for 2, 3 for box 3. You can only check 1 stress box for any single hit, but you can check a stress box and then take one consequence or more at the same time. Oh, that's good to know. But guys, you can't check a stress box if it's already got a check mark in it, okay? Just so you know. What are consequences? Consequences are new aspects that you take to reflect being seriously hurt in some way. Your character sheet has 3 slots where you can write consequences. Each one is labelled with 2, so mild, 4, moderate, or 6, severe. This represents the number of shifts of the hit that the consequence absorbs. Yeah, you can mark any of these as like to handle a single hit. So that's compared to that stress one where you can only do 1, you could do several hits. But only if that slot was blank to start with. Yeah. The downside of consequences is each consequence is a new aspect that your opponents can invoke against you. Ooh, that's good for the GM. The more you take, the more vulnerable you are. And just like situation aspects, the character creates it. In this case, the character that hits you gets one free invocation on that consequence. They can choose to let one of their allies use it for free. Ooh, okay. Let's read the example for this one. Get a proper example of it. Let's say you get hit really hard and take 4 shift hits. You check box 2 on your stress track, which leaves you with 2 shifts to deal with. If you can't, you're taken out. So for a consequence, so it's time for a consequence. You can choose to write a new aspect in the consequence label 2, let's say sprained ankle. Those final 2 shifts are taken care of and you can keep fighting. But that means me as a GM could invoke that for free without spending a fate point. Cool. But what happens when I get taken out? Lol, what is stress? More like, what isn't, am I right? Oh. Damn you see me, detective. Damn it. If you get taken out, you can no longer act in the scene. Whoever takes you out narrates what happens to you. It should make sense. It's based on how you got taken out. Maybe you run from the room in shame, or maybe you get knocked unconscious. However, giving in, which we talked about before, giving in or conceding the fight means you get to say what you're going to do before your opponent rolls the dice. This is different to being taken out because you have a say in what happens to you. The opponent gets some major concession from you. Talk about what makes sense in your situation, but it beats getting taken out and having no say at all. And additionally, if you concede, you can get 1 fate point for it, and 1 fate point for each consequence you took in the conflict. Ooh, that's pretty good. This is your chance to say you win this round, but I will get you next time, and get a whole stack of fate points back up. Nice. At the end of each scene, clear all your stress boxes. Recovery from consequences is a bit more complicated. You need to explain how you recover from it, whether it's an ER visit, taking a walk to calm down, or whatever makes sense with the consequence. You also need to wait an appropriate length of time. So here's some examples here. Clear it at the end of the scene, provided you get a chance to rest. Clear it at the end of next session for moderate. Severe consequence, clear it at the end of scenario, provided it makes sense within the story. Renaming moderate and severe consequences. Stick around for a time, but at some point you may want to change the name of the aspect to better fit with what's going on in the story. So for example, if after getting some medical help, painful broken leg might make more sense if you change it to hobbling on crutches. That makes sense. Here we go. Aspect and fate points. Aspect, we've talked about it a little bit, but it's a word or phrase that describes something special about a person, place, thing, situation, or group. As I've said before, almost anything you can think of can have aspects. A person might be the greatest swordswoman on the cloud sea. A room might be on fire after you knock over an oil lamp. After a time travel encounter with a dinosaur, you might become terrified. Aspects let you change the story in ways that go along with your character's tendencies, skills, or problems. You spend fate points, which you keep track of with pennies, or glass beads, or poker chips, and some of those. I've actually never used glass beads. I've used poker chips before, and a long time ago I used to use pennies and stuff. They always mention glass beads. Use glass beads. It doesn't matter too much, does it? You to unlock the powers of aspects and make them help you. You earn fate points by letting a character aspect being compelled against you to complicate the situation or to make your life harder. But be sure to keep track of fate points that you have left at the end of a session. If you have more than your refresh, you'll start the next session with the fate points you ended the session. Yeah, makes sense. I like how most people shorten my name to Butts, but you call me Detective, and with your accent, it makes me feel like Holmes. Well, Detective, I don't know what it is. I find that people, like, no one does it to me, so my last name is Howard. And I never get Howard. I always get my first name instead, right? So I just always call people first names. But I think it's a very, I don't know, maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know. Again, not to put gender norms on people. But I always use their first name. Maybe I've just been brought up right. I don't know. But Detective, you're my Sherlock Holmes. How's that? What kind of aspects are there? There are endless variety of them. I'm so glad you asked. There's character ones, which we talked about. Those are the ones on your character sheet using your high concept and trouble. They can describe personality traits, important details about your past, relationships you have with others, important items, titles you possess, problems you're dealing with, or the goals you're working towards, or reputations or obligations you have. Anything, okay? These aspects will only change under unusual circumstances, and most never will. Oh, excuse me. Situation aspects. So these aspects describe the surroundings that the action is taking place in. This includes aspects you create or discover using the create advantage action, and it usually vanishes at the end of the scene it was a part of, or when someone takes some action that would change or get rid of it. Essentially, they only last for as long as the situation element they represent lasts. So, for example, there you go. I knew there was something similar to this. Crowd of angry people. Bright sunlight on fire. To get rid of a situational aspect, you have to attempt to overcome it, to eliminate it, provided that you can think of a way your character would accomplish this. So, like, dump a bucket of water on a raging fire, use invasive maneuvers to escape an enemy fighter that's on your tail. The opponent might use a defend action to stop that aspect. It goes back to that attack, that the overcome. What was it? It was create advantage, overcome, attack, and defend goes against all three of those. Consequences. So these aspects represent injuries or long-lasting trauma that happens when you get hit by attacks. We've talked about those just now, so that's all fine. Now here we go. Boosts. Boost is a temporary aspect that you get to use once, and then it vanishes. Unused boosts vanish when the scene they were created in is over, or when the advantage they represent no longer exists. They represent very brief, fleeting advantages that you get in conflicts with others. So, for example, we've got in my sights, distracted, unstable footing, rock in his boot. Distracted is actually is just an aspect for me, the general aspect. What do you do with these aspects? Good question. We've talked about it already, but let's go for it. There's 3 things you can do. You can invoke them, compel them, or use them to establish facts. So to vote, you can evoke an aspect to give yourself a bonus or make things a bit harder for your opponent. You can evoke any aspect that you A, know about, B, can explain how to use it to your advantage, and including aspects on other characters or on other situations. Normally, this costs you a fate point. You hand those fate points to the GM. To evoke an aspect, you need to describe how the aspect helps you in your current situation. So, for example, I attack the zombie with a sword. I know that zombies are sluggish. I'll give you that fate point because I want to invoke the sluggish aspect against them. I really want to scare this guy. I heard he's scared of mice, so I release a mouse in his room. Now that the guard's distracted, I should be able to sneak right by them. This spell needs to be really powerful. This spell needs to be really powerful. I'm an arch-wizard of the Ancient Order, and powerful spells are my bread and butter. What's this box here? The only time a fate point might not go to the GM is if you're in conflict with another player. If you are, and you invoke one of the player's character's aspects to help you out against them, they will get the fate point instead of the GM once the scene is over. That's cool. I would call that... Well, no, it's not a compel, is it? Because you're using their aspect to help you rather than compelling their aspect against themselves. Okay. What am I talking about? Well, I'm sure we're about to find it. Lol, distracted would influence all my stunt actions. Correct, Butts. I think, do we not all have the aspect of distracted? But what does invoking an aspect get you? So we've got one of the following effects when you invoke it. You can either add +2 to your total, so this costs a fate point, re-roll the dice. This option is the best if you roll really lousy, usually a -3 or a 4 showing on the dice. And this costs a fate point as well. So I like that. It doesn't have to be just constantly add 2. You could re-roll everything. Confront an opponent with the aspect. You use this option when your opponent is trying to do something and you think an existing aspect would make it harder for them. For example, an alien folk would want to draw his blaster pistol, but he's buried in debris. You spend a fate point to invoke that aspect. Now your player's difficulty is increased by +2. That's really cool. I like that it's that sort of, it is very like, you've activated my aspect card. Send him to the shadow dimension. Was it Shadow Realm? I always get this way. My partner hates it when I get that wrong. And finally, help an ally with the aspect. So use this option when a friend could use some help and you think an existing aspect would make it easier for them. You spend a fate point to invoke that aspect and now your friend gets a +2. That's quite nice, especially if that friend doesn't have the aspects on that. You can only invoke an aspect once on a given dice roll. You can't spend a stack of fate points on one aspect and get a huge bonus for it. Makes sense. However, you can invoke several different aspects on the same roll. Very good. Invoking an aspect to add a bonus to a roll or reroll a dice, wait till after you do it. There's no sense of spending a fate point if you don't need to do so. That is true. That's true. But you have to remember it, because my God, the amount of times I've gone, oh wait, like 2 minutes later after I've done it, then I'd put it in big writings that you do it after the roll. Free invocation. So sometimes you can invoke an aspect for free without paying a fate point. If you create or discover an aspect through creating an advantage action from earlier, the first invocation on it by you or an ally is free. And if you succeeded with style, you get 2 of them. If you cause a consequence through an attack, your ally or you or your ally can invoke it for free. And a boost is a special kind of aspect that grants 1 free invocation before it vanishes. Okay, so that's all that first one of, what was it called? Invoking. Invoking. Now we have compelling aspects. You're in a situation where having or being around a certain aspect means your character's life is a bit more dramatic or complicated. Anyone can compel that aspect against you. You can even compel it on yourself. It's called a self-compel. These are the most common ways that players earn more fate points. So there's 2 types. There's decision ones, where that sort of compel suggests an answer to a decision that your character would make. So, for example, if you are Princess of Alari? Words. You may need to stay to the lead of the defense of the Royal Alarian Castle rather than fleeing to safety. Or, if you have a defiant streak a mile wide, maybe you can't help but mouth off to the Dean of Discipline when he questions you. So yeah, that's the sort of thing that would be compelled against you. If you're not sure what your character would do, go on that. And then you have event compels. So other times, a compel reflects something happening that makes your life more complicated for you. If you have strange luck, of course that spell you're working on in class accidentally turns Dour Potions Master's hair orange. Don Valdion a favour, and then Don Valdion shows up and demands you perform a service for him just when it's least convenient. In any case, when an aspect is compelled against you, the person compelling it offers you a fate point and suggests the aspect has a certain effect. You can make a certain decision or a particular event will occur. You can discuss it back and forth, proposing tweaks and changes to the suggested compel, and after a moment or two, you decide whether to accept the compel. If you agree, you take the fate point and make the suggested decision. Or, if you refuse, you pay. Ooh, I didn't know this. You pay a fate point from your own supply. Yes, this means if you don't have any fate points, you can't refuse a compel. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it's just like back and forth, but yeah. But of course, when you're compelling people, I would suggest like safety consent is important for it, because sometimes the person's allowed to tweak it a little bit. That's one thing. We did it with the other game that uses it. A Good Society uses it as well, where we would compel other people to do stuff with various tokens. But it has a strongly worded, not strongly worded, but has a very well worded talk about consent, what works well, and have that conversation with your players. Having that back and forth is really, really important. Did they just use the mob as an example? You'd be surprised how much the mob turns up in books. Certainly with settingless books. Campaign settingless books or genre settingless books. But I hear you ask, how many fate points does the GM get? As a GM, you don't need to track fate points for each NPC, but it doesn't mean you have an unlimited number. Start each scene with 1 fate point per NPC, and then spend those fate points to invoke aspects and consequences against the players. Yeah, so what I'd say for this is that you would... What's the word I'm thinking of? Sometimes you have to show it how it's done to the players, in the sense of, like, I did it with Good Society. Sometimes you have to spend quite a bit at the beginning as a GM to show how the system works and how to encourage other people to start spending their own tokens, their own sort of fate points to get the story going. Because sometimes you're like, I don't know what I'd spend it on, and you're not sure what's going on from that point of view. What else as well? How do you increase your own size? So if you use an NPC aspect against you, or a player does that, you add the fate point to that pool. If the compel ends the scene, or when the NPC ends in, add those fate points to your... Yeah. Fate points you award for compel does not come from this. You never have to worry about running out of fate points for awarding compel. Fair enough. So yeah, you'll have your own separate one. It's just if you're doing it. The final one is establishing facts in the game. You don't have to spend any fate points, roll dice, or make anything to make this happen. Just by virtue of having the aspect of Ruddy Duck's pilot, you've established that your character is a pilot and that you fly a plane called Ruddy Duck. Having the aspect Mortal Enemy Red Ninjas establishes the setting has an organization called the Red Ninjas, and that they're after you for some reason. If you take the aspect Sorcerer of the Mysterious Circle, not only have you established there's a group of sorcerers called the Mysterious Circle, but that magic exists in the setting and that you can perform it. When you establish facts of a setting this way, make sure you do it in cooperation with the other players. Most people want to play in a setting with... If most players want to play in a setting without magic, you shouldn't be unilaterally bringing magic into the aspect. I mean, that's fair enough, right? Make sure that the facts you establish through your aspects make the game fun for everyone. Here's probably something useful. How do we compose good aspects? Think of 2 things. How that aspect might help you when you evoke it, and how it might hurt you when it would be compelled against you. For example, let's do this is the bottom one, like hair trigger nerves. Invoke this when being extra vigilant or careful would be helpful to you, and then gain a fate point when this causes you to be jumpy or distracted by threats that aren't really there. So that's a good one, like hair trigger nerves would be a good aspect. Obviously, your trouble aspect is supposed to cause problems, and thereby making your character's life a little bit more interesting to get you fate points. So it's okay if that one's a little bit more dimensional. Yeah, that makes sense. Here you go, Detective Butts. Stunts. So these are tricks, maneuvers, or techniques that your character has that can change how an approach works with that character. Generally, this means you get a bonus in certain situations, but sometimes it gives you other ability or characteristic. A stunt can also reflect specialized, high-quality, or exotic equipment that your character has access to that gives them a frequent edge over other characters. There's no definitive list of stunts that you pick from. Much like aspects, everyone composes their own stunts. There are 2 basic templates that could guide you in composing stunts, so you do have something to work from. So the first one gives you a +2 to a bonus whenever you approach it. So use this template. Because I describe something that you are exceptional, have a cool bit of gear or otherwise, I get a +2 whenever I pick one of your approaches, and then pick attack, defend, create advantages, overcome when circumstances happen. So I guess if we're going to use that Batman one, so be careful with what title you give yourself. Absolutely, Detective. So for example, because I if I was playing Batman, right? Because I have the Batmobile, I get a +2 whenever I think it would be quickly, right? Quickly overcome. Whenever I quickly overcome when trying to get the robbers in a car chase, something like that. See what it says. Some other examples here. Because I am a world-class duelist, I get a +2 whenever I flashily attack when engaged in one-on-one sword fight. That's a much better example than my Batman one. I'm just trying to be cool, I think. Chase down. Perfect example there. Sometimes, if the circumstance is especially restrictive, you can apply the stunt to both create an advantage and the overcome action. Interesting. The second type of stunt lets you make something true, do something cool or otherwise ignore the usual rules in some way. So use this template. So because I describe some way that you are exceptional, have a cool bit of gear, or so otherwise awesome, once per game I can describe something cool. So for example, let's go for the second one. Because I'm quick on the draw, once per game session I can choose to go first in a physical conflict. Ooh, I like that. Because you're a Batman, you get a stealth bonus at night and have a chance to strike fear into your enemies. Ooh, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I can stealth attack, yeah, at night. Love that. That's character development. We're not going to cover character development too much because essentially, as you see here, you get you can get more stunts. You can change some of the ratings around, which is quite interesting. Not many other games do that, but we're not going to look at it too much because we're running out of time. I've got to go off and get ready in a second. But the final bit here, we've got like being a GM. There we go. I thought my computer crashed. That would have been really embarrassing at the end of the stream. Being a GM and running games can seem intimidating and difficult at first. It's a skill that takes some practice to master, so don't worry. You'll get better the more you do it, and you'll like to read some more. Oh, if you'd like to read more about the art of GMing, Fate, there are several chapters in the Fate core book. Of course, there's another bloody book about it. That you should check out. Running the game, scenes, sessions, and scenarios, and the long game that are particularly helpful. Fate core is available for free at evilhat.com. Yep, building games. Yeah. Why don't we look at let's look at some example characters. I just saw groups of moves there. Here we go. Let's go look at Reth. The Reth is the Suncaller of the Andrel Desert. Trouble is Steel Assassins want me dead. Other aspects would be my Kung Fu is the strongest. Crush on Avasa. I can learn from Sirio's experience. Oh, I like that. Look, the approach is there, and there's a stunt. Stance of the Defiant Sun. Because I've perfected the stance of the Defiant Sun, I get a +2 for forcefully defending in hand-to-hand combat. Great. Voltaire. Voltaire is the captain of feline captain of the Cirrus Skimmer. Trouble. Trouble. Yawn. I love stuff like that. Other aspects. Oh, that's a big that's a decoy. Martin is a big cheat. Sanchez is the best first mate a ship could have. What about the final one? Abigail Zowl. Abigail is enchantment specialist of Hippogriff House. Trouble is cast now, ask questions later. Other aspects include, I hate those guys in the Cyclop House. Oh, me too, Abigail. Sarah has my back. And Dexter Fitzwilliam is going down. And then, teacher's favourite. Because I'm teacher's favourite, once per session, I may declare that a helpful teacher arrives in the scene. Oh, that's really good. Oh, I like that one. My character in my head right now would be the wild man raised by wolves and semi-domesticated. So imagine Wolverine mixed with a lab. Oh, I love that. That's a great one, detective. And there's one there. Bethesda Flushing. Chief Field Agent of IGM. IGEMA. Whoa. I'll get you, Von Densdahl. Other aspects. My inventions almost always work. Almost. My grad students come through. Just not how I expect them to. And I trust Dr. Almedia's genius. Okay, great. And he does get a strength buff when he eats a can of beans. Perfect. I think you're ready to play, detective. I think you're ready to play. There you go. And then right at the back, our favourite bit, I'll zoom out a little bit so we can all see it, is the quick reference sheet, which is great. Again, yeah, would print this out. Have this for the players as well. Beautiful. Everything on 2 sheets. Yeah, and then there's the index, which is brilliant. The one thing I'd say before, if you're like, oh, I want to read those chapters in Fate Core, Fate Core uses, I think it's skills it's called, and there's a lot more skills to approaches, so sometimes the language doesn't meet up properly. or doesn't meet up or translate through, so it can be a bit confusing. So there is like not an accessibility guide, but there's like a conversion chart which says like these skills feed into flashy, or these skills feed into whatever. It's like a couple more. I think it's like 12 skills, I think. But yeah, there you go. That is, I didn't believe we would get through all that, but that is Fate Accelerated. I hope you enjoyed it. It's something a bit different. It's one that I do think requires a little bit more improv and a bit more willingness to be like a bit loosey-goosey with the rules. If you are into Powered by the Apocalypse games, which have very vague moves that you could do flavoursome on, that's the sort of feel you're going for in this. He hates fireworks and mistrusts all delivery persons. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I never trust. Whenever I get a parcel, it goes, oh yes, it's being shipped from UPS, and I'm like, I will never see that parcel. So yeah, I get that feeling of mistrust. But there you go. That is Fate Accelerated. I've only, like I said, I've only played it once a little while ago, and I'm sure I got the rules wrong back then as well. I think it's very useful. I think it can be very creative, and allows a lot of improv and role play with a very simple base system, right? I don't know how good it is on stream. I'd like to think it could be quite good on stream, but I think you'd have to show like a space where you could put the aspects on easily for everyone to see. Like the dice, it doesn't really matter too much, but having the ladder there so that the whole audience can see as well, and make sure that the GM talks about all the different difficulties and all the different like going through everything as succinctly as possible, as we were talking at the beginning of the stream. Like for me, giving this information out at the beginning of the stream and sort of like throughout, just so that people are reminded. But yeah, I think it's a great system, and I'm always a big fan of games that give you pay what you want, or basically free, but you should give some money to it. And yeah, just to go back, like yeah, so this is like their version of Fates, like the timeline of it. Big core system is there. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Yeah, that's kind of it. Thank you so much, guys, for saying it. Oh, you'd play it. Oh, great. I'm glad, Butts. Or Detective, sorry. Whoop, over familiar. It might be easier if it was more based on a story than a story-based actual play. Agreed. So we have, so that's what I'm recording tonight in about, what time is it now? In about half an hour, we're doing Dresden Files Accelerated. So we're using the story world of Dresden Files, which it's been a little while since I read it. I will say I was thinking about showing the Dresden Files Accelerated book instead, but there's a lot of lore in it, and I will say, like, as much as I really enjoyed those books when I was reading them, like Jim Butcher's work, I like the concept of it. It's what's the word? Of its time. Of its time. I think the McElroy brothers tried it on the Adventure Zone. Would not surprise me, actually. They have actually tried a couple of other games on it. They're just a bit slack about crediting them. They've got better at it, I will say. They have got better at it. One of my favourite games that they tried is one that Travis ran as part of their Maximum Fun Drive, which was four Sherlock Holmes, and one of them is a vampire. And it's just a one-page RPG where all of them are trying to work out who the vampire is, but they're all doing vampire-like things and trying to trick each other into doing also vampire-like things as well, which I would recommend. They've also done stuff like The Quiet Year, sorry, by Avery Alder, which is a cracking book. Anything by Avery Alder I would actually recommend. I should do one of those. I think they did Ribbon Drive as well. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate you lasting this long, listening to me waffle on about stuff. Like I said, all these versions of Fate are available. Pay what you want on whether it's Drive Through RPG from the Evil Hat website. And like I said, if I go back to quickly, go back to the stream. Is it not? Is it going to show me? Is it? It's not. To talk like this until something changes. I don't know where it's gone. Don't know where it's gone. It doesn't matter. I was just going to show you. Oh, I think you know what I've done? I've closed it. Oh, well done, Fiona. But yeah, I would recommend checking out the Evil Hat website because they've got other RPGs there, like Blades in the Dark, which is the Forged in the Dark engine, which is really good. They've got Thirsty Sword Lesbians. They've got what's the other one? Apocalypse Keys, which come out, and then Girl by Moonlight, all that sort of thing. Some all really interesting concepts and stuff, and quite a lot of it you can get like a quick start for quite quickly. So I'm going to say thank you very much. I'm going to go grab a cup of tea before recording. Enjoy whatever you're up to this evening. I'm sure I'll see you guys on another stream at some point, but thank you very much. I'll see you then. I'm going to wave awkwardly at the camera as I desperately try and find the off button, but thanks very much, guys. Bye!